was a lot better in The Spectacular Now.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't the problem with Fantastic Four, though.
No,
Right.
There's a lot of problems with Fantastic Four.
For all the problems, it was not Miles Teller, though. And I will go to bat for Miles and say that.
I'm going to quote you on that. It's actually literally going to be online.
It'd be funny if somebody pulled up the Fantastic Four episode and I'm like, Miles Teller's the worst part of this movie.
Here comes the theme!
Hello and welcome to the Critical Breakdown, the podcast where we start at the bottom of Rotten Tomatoes and work our way to 100% fresh. I'm Max.
And I'm Scott, and today we're talking The Spectacular Now, rated 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. And we're doing so with our Myles expert, Myles Griffin, from The More You Nerd.
How's it going, guys?
From The More You Nerd and Cosmic Crypt.
Excuse me. Myles, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me almost exactly 2 years later.
Yeah, you were long-time listeners will remember you from our Fantastic Four episode, which many
was it 9%?
dubbed. 9 or 8. I can't remember.
I feel like 9 sounds right.
9 sounds right. But many people called that episode fantastic. And
they said at the very end.
Yeah. And when we had another Miles Teller movie coming up, we had to bring it.
Yeah, we're going to have to increase our Miles Teller movies if that's the only time we're featuring you, Miles. So.
Hey, I only came when you asked. I mean, I'm fine coming more frequently if you want.
Yeah, we'll have to change the rule there, make it more frequent.
I'm also down for more Miles Teller movies.
Scott's like, either way, I'm cool.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Some form of Miles.
Always
please.
down for Miles Teller movies.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Miles Teller movies, maybe our next movie is as of yet undetermined.
I don't think Miles Teller's in any of these 4, but you never know.
We'll find out, but you, the listener, will be the ones determining what we watch next week, just like we did for the past few percentages. Our next choice will be a fan poll. So, Max, what are we slinging out there on the Blu-ray shelf?
This is basically 4 movies that have been my favorite films throughout portions of my life, I think. So it's a hard one here, but we have Children of Men, Jurassic Park, Saving Private Ryan, and The Lion King.
Yikes. How do you vote there?
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fitting, too, because Face Off as your choice and Spectacular Now as my choice are more like pet favorites that were on this line.
Yeah.
So then it's like, let's just bring all the heavy hitters in on the poll.
Yeah. Let's put the kind of movies together that people really like to talk about here.
For sure. Jurassic Park, we have Fallen Kingdom, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom coming out right around the corner. So
yeah,
maybe people will vote Jurassic Park because of that.
And it's the 25th anniversary of Jurassic Park as well. So,
are you a JP fan, Myles?
I am. I loved the original book. I love the original movie. And then it's been kind of touch and go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll agree.
For sure.
Like, I enjoyed Jurassic World. That's a different episode altogether, but I enjoyed it in a very campy way.
Yeah, I mean, I did not expect to get the original sense of wonder and the animatronics that I did in the first film. I paid to see a spectacle with dinosaurs, and that's what I got.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can't argue too much, but it certainly wasn't like as groundbreaking as the first one.
No.
And early reviews are out for Fallen Kingdom, and it's at like 60-70% range, I think. So
higher than I thought it would be, actually.
Same here. On our summer movie preview, I think I predicted it as like a 50 or something like that.
I went like 80, but that's because every single movie Bayona's done has been 80. So
yeah, he's a good director.
I was like, let's go with that, but I'll probably be wrong. I'll admit that now.
And I have not tried to watch the original Jurassic Park since the terrors of my childhood. So this could be a real come to Jesus moment for me.
It might be.
Then we have The Lion King.
Yes, The Lion King.
Yes.
It's kind of like, I'm not going to say it's most people's favorite Disney movie because I don't think it is, but it's a lot of people's favorite Disney movie. And it's Shakespeare. It has some of the catchiest songs. It's, anthropomorphic cats. And all sorts of jungle creatures. You can't really go wrong with that. So for
sure. Is it your favorite Disney movie? The Disney cartoon there?
It definitely was when I was growing up. And I still have a lot of love for it.
Yeah. So. What is your current though?
I'd have to really reassess, but I did end up growing to love Beauty and the Beast a lot more when I got older.
Yeah, same here.
So good.
Yeah,
it's
Beauty and the Beast is
it's
great.
such a really well-made film. Yeah. And Lion King is too, but it's probably I'm always kind of bouncing between the two. So
Beauty and the Beast was the first one that was like, this is more than just a cartoon. Like, it's real art. And maybe that's
it was
a shortcoming.
Nominated for an Oscar, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Best Picture nom.
Yeah. Which is
and now,
awesome.
like, Up, I think, was also nominated.
That would make sense.
That was after they expanded the nominees in, like, 2007 or 8 there. But there's probably a couple other Disney cartoons that got nominated that I'm not thinking of. But Lion King's cool. And then they're doing a remake of that one.
Yeah.
Which I don't care too much about most remakes. And, like, The Jungle Book was fine. But the cast on the Lion King remake looks incredible. Beyonce
it does,
and Donald Glover as your main pair there.
And then you have Zazu, the bird, being played by John Oliver.
Oh, yeah.
So excited for that. When they announced that, I was like, that is the most pitch perfect casting.
Yeah, it's a little on the nose, but in a good way. So.
Yeah.
And isn't James Earl Jones coming back for,
that's awesome.
for the same voice?
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of exciting. Maybe the rumblings of that cast, people are like, let's hear the podcast boys talk Lion King.
Yeah, maybe.
Did we also cast Seth Rogen as Pumbaa?
Oh,
that makes
enough
sense for me to believe it without looking it up.
Yeah. I mean, just everything about that sounds right, actually. So,
like, I think Eric Andre is going to voice one of the hyenas.
Oh, nice.
Like, it's insane. It's an insane cast.
You guys could just start like naming fake castings, and I really would believe it by this point.
Like President Obama. I don't have a character to assign to him.
Me either.
We could also be storming the beaches of Normandy with Saving Private Ryan.
It's true.
Yikers.
This the cast list, just going over that would be amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like everybody's in that movie.
Barry Pepper.
Yeah, Barry Pepper is
done.
in that film. No, I mean, kind of having two Spielbergs back to back is interesting. Like versus each other, not back to back, but versus each other. So
for sure.
Saving Private Ryan's one of those movies where I man cry at the end of it a little bit. So.
Oh yeah, the final stand there.
Oh yeah.
The zoom out to old man Matt Damon.
Yeah. It gets me.
I think that's fair. I don't think anyone would begrudge you that.
Yeah, whoever judges me, did
you see Max crying at the end of Saving Private Ryan?
If we do that, Scott will say that on the air. And then we have Children of Men.
Yeah, and we've talked about it a number of times, comparing it to other movies.
Yeah,
because it's so good.
Yeah, for sure.
But then we'd get a real deep dive in. So
yeah.
We could, for that episode, actually, we could take the week off and just splice together our other clips talking about it. We've probably got enough.
Probably.
The cast there is really good, though, too. Obviously, directing and writing, really good. Which of those would you vote for, Myles?
Oh, man. So whenever we have these kind of conundrums on The More You Nerd, I always tend to vote for the one I've seen the least recently.
Ooh, I like that.
Because that way I can kind of give it a more nuanced, fresh perspective that I may not afford something that I've seen 1,000 times.
Yeah, I think that's a good policy there. For me, that would be Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
For me, that would be, I think, Children of Men or Saving Private Ryan.
Oh.
I haven't seen either of them, I think, since theaters.
Those are probably the two toughest to rewatch. Like, Jurassic Park is so much fun. Lion King is so much fun. You can just throw them on and watch them.
Just because of VHS experience as a kid, I've seen Jurassic Park and Lion King probably hundreds of times by now. Saving Private Ryan would probably take that, like, seeing the least kind of sense for me because it's the longest. I want to say.
And it's not an easy watch.
And it's not an easy watch. No.
It's like, oh, let's throw on Saving Private Ryan. We can at least watch the Normandy scene.
Yeah, that's something our friend Joe would say.
Yeah. So your conundrum here actually makes me want to ask something that I've been kind of curious about. So I understood, from early on why you would probably have no problem going through the numbers. But as you got higher and higher on your tomato meter from maybe like 70 or 80 onward, do you find it more difficult to set yourself on a specific movie? Do you ever feel like, oh, I wish we could have done this one instead? Like, are you finding yourselves like kind of struggling with a movie choice more frequently because the caliber of film, according to the aggregates, has been higher?
I think... Yeah, for sure. Once we split into this 3 method, it's kind of been a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Because it gives us more to talk about. and kind of a better, like, it's more at ease, I guess. It's not like we missed out if we have at least 3 choices per line.
Yeah.
And saving it for the cream of the crop is probably better there because, I mean,
absolutely.
You know, we wouldn't want to do this in the terrible movies, but
with the really bad movies, a lot of times it was just like, okay, what's a movie that people will have heard of on a line? And that's half the battle. And then figuring out one you can watch. When we got to the 60s and 70s, we actually negotiated sometimes where it would be like, okay, I really want to watch Swiss Army Man. And you're like, we can do that, but then we're also watching Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then when we got this high and we did it this way where I have my picks and Max has his and the fan poll, it became easier because there wasn't negotiating like that. It was just, what's the movie you want to talk about? And we each got our pick. But
and
it
at this
definitely
high, there's no losing.
No, yeah.
Exactly. Like, even with, I mean, we talked about it with this last week's episode that just came out, which is Face Off. It's not Scott's normal type of movie, but watching such a ridiculous, fun action movie, like, you can appreciate it when it's this high rated because you see what people are talking about.
Yeah.
It's so fun. And I think the most, of all of his American films, except for maybe, I think he did The Replacement Killers, the most John Woo of his American films.
Yeah, for sure.
It had the doves.
It did.
In the church. No, it also got harder because there was just more movies that I've heard of.
Yeah.
Like the 40% to 30%, if I were this into movies when they came out, maybe I'd remember them, but a lot of them just fall off if they have nothing memorable about them. So.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like you hit those weird percentages where you hit like I'm trying to see a good one. Like Takers was a movie that, I mean, nobody remembers, but it's a funny movie to talk about. So it's kind of a weird conundrum in itself where you might have something that's really funny to say, but no one's heard of the movie, and that actually might draw some people in sometimes. So it's kind of fun in that sense, but then also I mean, we watched a lot of straight crap, and
yeah, when you go from 0 to 100, that's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's just we're watching a lot of good stuff, so it's kind of a lot more fun. But also, we've had people approach us, and they've been like,
I wish the bad movies.
I wish you guys would watch bad movies again. And it feels like there's already a ton of bad movie podcasts out there.
Yeah.
So maybe people just like when we're really angry.
Well, I think it's like funnier.
Yeah, true.
I also think it has a lot to do with the two of you. I mean, yes, there are a lot of bad movie podcasts out there, but people tend to gravitate towards people with chemistry, people who seem like, great hosts, and the two of you definitely have that. So just because other people do it doesn't mean they necessarily do it as well as you guys do.
That's true.
That's very sweet of you. And it shows that our work paid off, because every day when we come in here to record, I bring a giant belt, and me and Max belt up into the same belt through the same loops so we can feel our heartbeats as we talk.
We've
it's
thought
very uncomfortable.
We've thought about just getting one giant pair of pants, but the belt seems closer.
Yeah, the belt's better. So
I've tried randomly to convince Scott to dip into some bad movies again sometimes, and
it's just
he gets this very sad look in his eye.
It's a tough sell.
So I guess my question, Scott, is did you grow up with Mystery Science Theater 3000?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen more than 10 minutes of an episode.
I definitely grew up with
it. It was ingrained in my sense of humor, so I get entertainment value out of watching and making fun of bad movies, or at least experiencing them.
For sure.
And I think that has really keyed in as far as like getting kind of your jollies from watching bad movies. And one that I would personally recommend, because it is hilariously dumb, is Alien vs. Predator Requiem.
Oof. Ooh. Do you have to have much of a Predator or Alien background?
You don't have to know much about anything, including story, because the movie often forgets it. Like there are elements that change within the scene, as if like a different writer came in, didn't see the rest of the what was scripted, and just started writing.
That's almost like an artistic style, right?
That's what I argue, but I also knew for a fact that was not the case.
Yeah. We're looking at the cast list now, and there's names I've heard of. John Ortiz, Sam Trammell.
Yeah, I mean, there are, elements that could have been interesting, but it goes back with even the first one, or even your other, long gestating films like Freddy vs. Jason and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I guess because I'm sorry, I'm kind of like in the more interview mode because I haven't talked to you guys together in quite some time. Were there movies that surprised you, like that you would still like outside of having done the episode of the podcast, that you're like, you know what, that movie got a bad rap?
I mean, 100%. I'm on record a number of times discussing Joe Dirt and how it's actually comedic genius, and I don't even mean that as a bit. I actually think it's a very funny movie. And like Charlie St. Cloud, we both grew to love. It's cheesy, but it's really good. And Zac Efron's super charming. Twins, I still think about. Like,
Twins is surprisingly still funny, and that kind of surprised me because I remember Twins being kind of like dumb funny from when I was a kid.
Yeah,
but it somehow worked a lot better for me as an adult. What was the other one that was an 80s one? Weekend at Bernie's is really funny.
Weekend at Bernie's is really funny.
Yeah.
Not even the Bernie bits.
Yeah, like
the writing is just funny.
The one-liners are super funny. So
what actually surprised me going through this is when we'd pick movies and I'd be like, Hook at 30%? Come on. There's no way it's that bad. And then I was like, validated. I was like, I actually really didn't like that. I get why it's that.
Like the Robin Williams movie Hook?
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
It's at 30%?
I think 30. That might not be 100% correct, but it's down there in the 28 to 35 range. That and Space Jam both.
Yeah.
We watched in like
sense.
2 out of 3 weeks, and
Hook was 29%.
Yeah.
So the thing with Hook is like the Robin Williams-ness of it is kind of magical, but like it is just kind of bullshit beyond that. And I think you guys on The More You Nerd, I know on Psychotronic they've discussed this before, but the nostalgia factor kind of it distracts people sometimes from thinking about when movies are actually bad. And I have a lot of great memories of watching Hook when I was younger, and it wasn't like good, but it was fun to see like peak Robin Williams. So it's kind of a weird experience.
Well, speaking of Robin Williams movies that I remember as a kid that I thought was amazing and turned out to be terrible was Fern Gully.
I haven't
That's
seen
a Robin
that one.
Williams movie?
He plays this weird bat in that movie.
Oh, I didn't even realize. I haven't seen that since I was a wee lad.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, you watch it again, you're like, oof.
Is the rap scene really awkward? Doesn't he rap?
He does. Oh God, what was that one group that did
Salt and Pepper?
No, it was like Still Living Like That. I think it was the song. Like because they stole that na 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 na.
Oh yeah.
He does that whole scene on his tape Walkman.
And he's a bat.
Yeah. No. Well,
isn't he?
Robin Williams is a bat, and then there is this
yeah.
This like you think he's a kid, but he's like a construction guy.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's not good.
Sounds a little weird.
I haven't thought. I mean, I rarely even think of that movie.
Well, they made a sequel to Ferngully too, didn't they?
I can't remember.
Yeah, the Magic
Possibly.
Rescue. They did. Now it's fun to go through the. I think I could do the occasional terrible movie if it was like a little mixture.
Yeah.
Going through them week after week got daunting.
Well, you could kind of boomerang it. You could do like 1 and then 100 and then 2 and then 99.
The critical boomerang.
No, we've pitched out a couple ideas that might allow us to go into both bad and good. So we'll see what comes of it. But for sure, I mean, there's so many shit movies we saw that I kind of think back on with like a little bit more love than I should, just because we had so much fun watching it. Because like we were saying, the Mystery Science Theater aspect kicks in. So
for sure,
the Mortal Instruments film is terrible, but it was really fun to watch it and make fun of it. Dungeons and Dragons, the movie, is a very bad movie. Yeah. Also fun to talk about. Same with like Jumper.
Yeah.
Jumper's not good, but it's really good to talk about. So I mean, there's some of them out there that are just kind of like goofy movies that you like to talk about, but they're not good.
Not to get too far off track, but have either of you guys tried that Impulse show on YouTube, the Jumper based TV show?
No, I keep seeing they keep throwing it in my face, but I haven't watched it yet.
I am not the person who was like, Jumper was fine. Jumper wasn't very good.
There are quite a few people who stand up for it, and I respect that. That's fine.
Yeah, good for you.
I think for me, I wanted to like Jumper. I wanted it to be a good movie, and it just wasn't.
It was really close to being a good movie.
Yeah, and
then it fell
misuses, an amazing cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it skirted like moments that could have been really, really like memorable.
Yeah.
It just missed the mark almost like every single time it got close. So
Yeah.
But that's Jumper for you.
That's Jumper.
That's Jumper, folks.
It's kind of cool that we're talking about this because we have Fantastic Four Myles Teller, and now we're bringing it all the way up to 92% with the Spectacular Now Myles Teller.
That's true.
So that's kind of the full range, and he was a lot better in the Spectacular Now.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't the problem with Fantastic Four, though.
Right.
There's a lot of problems with Fantastic Four.
For all the problems, it was not Myles Teller, though. And I will go to bat for Myles and say that.
I'm going to quote you on that. It's actually literally going to be online.
It'd be funny if somebody pulled up the Fantastic Four episode and I'm like, Myles Teller's the worst part of this movie.
No, I think I remember you, and I feel like all of us were kind of middling on the movie because the reputation for the movie was so bad. And I remember walking away thinking, it's fine.
Yeah.
What I remember from that episode is you said that you've always been the guy who, quote unquote, defends Fantastic Four or likes Fantastic Four just because you didn't absolutely hate it. And we all kind of came away with that same read on it because it's really just boring for an hour and then there's a terrible ending.
Yeah.
But it's not that bad. It's not like the most egregious film.
Yeah, for sure.
It is a waste of a lot of talent, money, and source material.
Yeah.
I still get yelled at for that movie. People still remember the fact that I like that movie, or at least I tolerate that movie, and then somehow translates, oh, Myles loved Fantastic Four, ask him about it. And I was like, I said it was fine.
It's that whole duality of people not being able to like kind of like things anymore. You either love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with people loving stuff, and I'm also cool with people hating things, but you got to understand there's a middle ground.
There's a gray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of like Jupiter Ascending.
That one was actually pretty fun.
I have fun with the movie. It's colorful.
Yeah.
Gugu Mbatha Roth. Wait, is that her name?
Yeah, that actually is.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Bees don't lie. I say that all the
Bees
time now.
don't lie.
So
I like to do I create life.
That movie is kind of getting a renaissance online. There are a lot of people I see more and more every week talking about that film.
It's actually all me.
Yeah.
In my alt accounts.
I actually a lot of the women film critics that I follow, they often go back to that movie, and every few months one of them will start talking about, people need to watch this movie. It's so much fun. And I see the appeal. I just haven't gotten around to watching it. And I love Mila Kunis is the star, right?
Yeah. Oh, so you haven't seen it even once?
No, I haven't seen it at all.
Well, I agree with the ladies you've been reading. There's bad movies that are also not fun at all, and then there's movies that aren't very good and they're also very fun. And that's Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah.
So,
no, I'll agree on that.
Yeah.
It's visually appealing. There's a fun story. It doesn't really make a lot of sense at points, but it still keeps you like engaged with it. Yeah. So
I also feel like in film criticism, especially online, you can't just be lukewarm on something.
Yeah, it's more you get a headline when you're like, Fantastic Four should get Josh Trank hung.
Yeah, right.
And here's why that's good.
Yeah.
Or you can't love something and still recognize that there's problems with it.
Yeah.
Max and I have briefly talked about the horrible toxicity that's happened with the Star Wars franchise on Twitter a little bit. And, I remember him coming off not having that great of a time with the movie in terms of just what he took away as a Star Wars fan.
Yep.
And I saw like everything he said. And I'm like, no, I see that. I had more fun with it, but I absolutely concede there are lots of problems with it, and that's okay. Like, you can talk about Star Wars and not yell at your friends.
Yell at strangers or the people playing the characters.
That too.
And I mean, even with strangers, because some have hit me up when I make random comments on like Twitter. Some people I don't even know, and they'll, I guess, try to like poke at me with it. And I honestly now I'm just trying to converse without even getting angry.
Yeah.
Because like Solo didn't do it for me, but I recognize that a lot of people are enjoying it. I'm actually kind of happy for people that are getting a lot out of it. But like I said, I was fine with it. Like we said, kind of that gray area. Like it's not my favorite. I don't think it does much for the franchise, but I'm not going to be like, you guys are dumb for loving it. You know, like if someone loved it, I think that's awesome because me personally, I had a great time with The Last Jedi, and I know a lot of people didn't. But at the same time, like I didn't feel good if someone came up to me and was like, "You're dumb for liking it." Yeah. And thankfully, none of my friends said that to me. So I know like normal people, which is good. But there's plenty of people out there who are like crazy. I mean, it's like you just got to look on what happened with any of the talent in the movie, and even people defending like you should never talk bad about an actor. But here's my issues with The Last Jedi. It's like, what are you talking about?
Like, why even lead? Like
yeah, like why is it your second
conversation
comment?
Like that?
The comment should stop at, we shouldn't mess with people. Like, we should leave them alone. Like, that's it. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
And most people know I have kind of rose-tinted glasses when it comes to Star Wars anyway. Like, everything that's been coming out, like, I've loved all of it. From Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rogue One, and Solo. I've at least had a blast. Mm-hmm. I've had issues with probably all of them as far as, story conceits and we did Morning Nerd did an episode on Solo, and I talked about some of my very real problems with some of the narrative, especially considering Han Solo seemed to, leave the Imperial infantry not horrified at all.
Yeah.
No issues with it. Just not his thing.
That really bothered me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I still walked away. I generally had fun with the movie.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's like I'll even go back and watch it again. I'm not in a rush to see it again, but I'll probably buy it and watch it because it's not my favorite. But maybe maybe it'll grow on me next time I see it.
I still watch The Phantom Menace, and I do not like that movie. But when I go through my little Star Wars saga thing, I still watch it.
That's what we like about you, Myles.
For me, the only one that I just cannot get behind, even in a fun way, is Attack of the Clones.
And you know what?
In fairness, we watched Attack of the Clones, a year ago?
Yeah.
And it was actually fun to watch. To get together with a group. We watched with one very drunk friend who I believe kept saying it's the best of the prequels.
Yeah, he kept saying it's one of the best ones altogether. Yeah. So that made it extra fun. I will say,
I know his friend?
No.
Okay, I thought I knew who it might have been.
Good.
No. I thought I might have.
But I will say the last two times I've watched Attack of the Clones, it has been with people razzing it, and it does work a lot better. Yeah. So I mean, sometimes you just gotta be fine with that.
Razz tracks.
Yeah. And when people tell me they cannot watch The Phantom Menace, I get it.
Yeah.
There are times I watch it, and I'm just like, why am I doing this?
And you get it even more.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we this is not a Star Wars podcast.
Yeah, we're getting deep here.
I've derailed you guys
No,
so far off.
Well, you know what else is a Phantom Menace? Alcoholism.
Oh,
good segue.
That's top shelf.
Yeah,
top shelf.
Top shelf, nice.
Well, let's dive in. Max, what's the plot synopsis for The Spectacular Now?
A hard-partying high school senior's philosophy on life changes when he meets the not-so-typical nice girl.
Boom.
That's taken from IMDb.
Just
for the record. It felt right.
Yeah.
I love listening to elevator pitches because sometimes you're like, yeah, but not really.
Yeah.
We always read the IMDb synopsis, or Max will write one if the IMDb one's not even legible.
Yeah, sometimes the IMDb ones are nuts, and I'm like, I know people can you can edit those in different ways. Not everyone, but if you have access to it, you can.
We checked because I was wondering if studios provided that, and I checked, and it's actually users who write the synopsis.
Yeah, and they'll pick, I guess, whichever one is best. But some of these films, and maybe it's the worst movies we watched, some of them don't make sense. But this one was pretty choice, I thought. It covers the general feel of it.
Yeah,
it does.
And at its core, the synopsis you need is coming of age story, because this is so much that genre.
Yeah,
and it does things that other coming of age movies don't do, but it doesn't really fly the nest much.
Yeah, I mean, it stays within the genre, the bounds of the boundaries of the genre, but it's it kind of approaches some of them differently. So,
for sure.
Yeah, coming of age, teenage coming of age films is my thing. I love them so much, and it always throws people off. But I'm such a huge fan of those stories.
Yeah, I am too. It's probably my favorite subgenre. I guess it probably isn't its full-fledged drama, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a subgenre for sure. Real quick, before we get too deep into this film, as we've already segued a ton, but what do you guys think are some of the best coming of age films out there? Give some examples for the listeners out there. I hate to put you on the spot.
The nice thing is you get a lot of different types. You have your high school coming of age drama, like The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which there was a trailer that played on this Blu-ray experience, and I really like that movie. And for me, any coming of age movie, really any movie of any genre, when you do something that sets you apart from the pack, it'll always make it more memorable for me. So that's like your high school movie. You have The Perks of Being a Wallflower. The Spectacular Now is legitimately one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And then if you leave the high school area, you have like Stand By Me is a classic, and that's younger kids, but it still resonates for adults for sure. I really liked Everybody Wants Some, which that might be a reach to call it a coming of age movie.
I mean, it's a college-aged one.
Yeah. And it's more slice of life if you had to like give it a singular genre name.
I'm also a fan of that. Like, I'm a big like slice of life anime fan, so I like watching like the a favorite of mine. This is definitely one of them. I felt like even though it veers a little bit more towards the comedic side, the recent Dope was amazing.
Yeah. I watched it like 6 months ago. I didn't like it, and I can't really put a finger on why. It just didn't connect for me. Like the humor didn't connect for me, and it's a very, like you said, it's a very humorous movie. It's like more comedy than drama of the coming of age side, and I didn't enjoy it for that.
And I do understand that, because I do wish there was a little bit more drama. It plays more for humor, but I really thought it was a good movie, and it injected a lot of the coming of age movies that get popular or get a widescreen audience tend to be a little vanilla.
Yeah, I think you could
in
listen
terms of their casting.
Oh yeah,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, like, two of my favorites would definitely be Almost Famous, and I just had another one in my head. Rushmore. Which is like the Wes Anderson coming of age film almost, his first foray into that. But extremely white movies. I'm trying to think, like Boys in the Hood is kind of like an older one, but
Moonlight.
And Moonlight's great. Moonlight almost also is a slice of life movie to me as well, but it has so much character growth, and I think that's the key to a coming of age movie. And I mean, it's in the name of the genre, coming of age.
Yeah.
It's all about the growth of a character and those kinds of names. It's like Good Will Hunting, I think, is a coming of age movie at the end of the day. It's a great drama on its own, but Will Hunting comes of age.
I think one of my favorites is Charlie Bartlett.
I never saw Charlie Bartlett. I've been meaning to watch it with Anton Yelchin.
Amazing cast. Yeah, Anton Yelchin, Kat Dennings, who I'm a huge fan of, Robert Downey Jr., and it's really, really fantastic cast. And that was, I think, Alpha Dog might have been my introduction to him. But as a leading man, like he had so much charisma, and that character was so fantastic. And the characters, even though it played a little comedic, it's very grounded. And I don't know, that story to me it has a lot of heart in it.
I'm going to have to report back to you thoughts after Charlie Bartlett, because I really have been meaning to watch it, and I just haven't.
So there's plenty of draw for you there.
Yeah.
I've always meant to watch it too, but I haven't seen it. But I'm saying that definitely hits like a bunch of Scott bullet points. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's good that we see a lot of people trying to mix up the vanilla of the genre. Like Love, Simon was a big hit this year.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to see it in theaters, and I think it just closed, but as soon as
it
it's
just
streaming,
came out on Blu-ray, I think. I saw it in Target this weekend.
Yeah.
But I meant to pick it up.
There's always been like kind of a couple female-led coming of age films, but I know Edge of 17 had a good reaction,
and it was great.
It was good. It was really good.
And then
Eighth Grade comes out later this summer.
I cannot wait to see Eighth Grade.
It's like my most anticipated summer movie because, one, Eighth Grade's so weird, but two, it's directed and written by Bo Burnham, who is, I mean,
this has been getting a lot of buzz in festival circuits and stuff. So,
but I mean, from his YouTube stuff to his stand-up, which is unlike any other stand-up performance you'll watch, he's just a really budding success. So I'm really excited to see that movie, especially after I think it won like Sundance London Awards or something. I can't follow these festivals anymore, man.
Jonah Hill's working on one now called Mid 90s.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't even realize that.
They're still, I think, just casting it because, I know they've filmed it because a lot of people have come off and said, like, it was his first film that he was directing, and they said he was awesome to work with.
Good.
And that they can't wait for people to see this movie, but no one knows when it's coming out. There's not a trailer or a poster or anything yet. But
yeah,
I always keep my ear to the ground for coming of age films. Netflix just dropped one, a couple. Some of them were rom-coms, but they had Cookie Jar or Candy Jar about the two kids who are debate team heads.
Oh. Is it? Are they Netflix originals?
Yes.
Okay.
That one's a Netflix original. There's one, The Kissing Booth, and then there was that one with Lucy Hale, Dude.
I heard about Kissing Booth, but I haven't.
It was about a group of girlfriends. It kind of blended a lot of different genres. Your stoner comedy, your coming of age, and I really enjoyed it. A couple of my friends kind of had an issue with it, but I feel like it did more right than wrong. It does kind of flip-flop its story. It's not exceedingly well told, but the characters are really great.
Yeah. I think
and sometimes that's all you need.
Netflix originals are weird now because they release so much and it's a very low bar for what they put out, admittedly. I have enjoyed many Netflix releases, but now I feel like people are always ready to jump on and rag on the newest Netflix release. But I always appreciate that they're probably giving an audience that a film never would have gotten. Mm-hmm. Like a movie like Kissing Booth probably doesn't get a full theatrical release. And the people who made it could probably have pitched it to producers and studios for months and never got anywhere. Netflix just takes flyers on these kinds of movies and more people see it. And I think that's good.
You got to think it's kind of replaced the straight to VHS DVD and it's
straight to VOD.
And it's replacing the TV movie as well. Like you have a lower bar of entry, and that doesn't mean it's a worse product.
No.
It just means they're not going to gate it as much as a theatrical release, basically. So,
well, I think some of the people jump on the kind of hate bandwagon because Netflix for the longest time had such a bit of quality associated with it because of your Marvel TV shows, your Stranger Things, your Orange is the New Black. So people get really, really harsh on stuff that comes out as a Netflix original because, it's supposed to be X quality. And that's not always the case. I mean, we'd like for that to be true, but I saw Death Note and it's not.
It's a film.
Yeah, like the Cloverfield Paradox was a Super Bowl flop.
I love that movie, but that's an entire episode.
Yeah, that's another discussion.
That rabbit hole hard with that franchise.
I want to stick with The Spectacular now because it was my pick for the 92% because it is one of my favorite movies, just period.
Yeah.
No other qualifier needed. I discovered it shortly after it came out, just browsing Amazon. I think I watched it like 3 a.m. one day. That's a move I'll do where I'll watch like an emotional movie in the middle of the night. But I've probably seen it 5 or 6 times now, and I never really know who to recommend it to because it's charming. It has its share of humor, but it's a very serious movie.
Yeah.
Whereas like a Say Anything or a Mean Girls or a lot of these other movies are still comedies at their hearts. This is not a comedy at its heart. Yeah. This is a serious character study, in my opinion.
It's a quieter film in a lot of ways. It's not a loud comedy, like you said, and it doesn't have that kind of that zinger. It's more of to me a very authentic story. The kids feel like actual kids of that time and age.
What impressed me the most with this film, because this is my first time seeing it, was they really captured how you're doing nothing at this age, but how it feels so damn important. Mm-hmm. Like everything they're doing felt like it was like an event, this big major thing happening, and it was just like going to a lake and grabbing a drink or going to visit your dad, and it just felt like everything was the most drastic version of what could happen, even though it's pretty mundane, but the feel of it was still there. Like I had a sense of dread for half the movie.
Yeah, because you knew something was.
I mean, in a movie something's going to happen, but also I just knew he as a character would eventually like this carefree life he's like faking isn't gonna work. It just never does. So.
From the start, you know that too, because the opening narration, he's talking about how great everything is. They're the life of the party, and then even in that opening story, he's framing it as a positive, but it's not. He's like, oh, and me and Cassidy break up, but we always end up back together, and this, and you just grab another drink and you go to another party and you're fine. And it's not fine from there. Yeah. But he doesn't know that yet.
I find Sutter to be such an interesting character.
I do too.
Because he has some of these staples as, the popular guy, but he's not a jock. And he's popular with the girls, but he doesn't seem to really be a misogynist or take advantage of anybody. But like you see in a lot of these films, especially in the 80s. Yeah. But he has toxic behavior. Yeah. But he tries to understand his toxic behavior. Not that doesn't excuse it, but he becomes aware of it and tries to fix it. And I feel like it's such a different role for this kind of protagonist, for this kind of male protagonist in these movies, because you very rarely have these characters who are that aware and who aren't a walking stereotype. Like he has aspects of the archetype, but he doesn't always fulfill them.
For sure. I mean, he's an unreliable character. And I mean, 2/3 of the way through the movie, the scene where he meets his father, that's a wake-up call for him. Yeah. Like up until that point, he doesn't, like, he's very aware, and he's not, I mean, his drinking is obviously a problem. He's a binge drinker. He's an alcoholic, and he's 18.
He's drinking like in every single scene up until I think the graduation scene. He's got a drink in hand at some point in every scene.
I mean, I think you're right. Maybe the paper tossing scene when he first meets Amy, he doesn't. Yeah. But other than that, he really
just woke up from drinking.
Yeah. It's still a part of the scene.
I will say at that point in the film, like I said, I hadn't seen it, so I thought maybe they were going to reveal that because she seemed like she was pretty working class to poor, and I thought maybe the film was going to focus a lot on the class differences, and I actually appreciated that he's the same like social class as her. He just has like a fun, quote unquote, fun personality that has kind of put him in a higher like social standing at school. So I kind of like that they got to play with that a little bit where, I mean, this is the kind of film that if this was made in the 80s, it would be rich kid falls in love with, poor kid.
Right.
Or like 10 Things I Hate About You. It would be something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like even the trailer frames it that way, like that you're supposed to believe that Amy is a little bit on the poorer side, but when you watch the film, it's like, well, so was Sutter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Sutter's like how outgoing he is, and I think it's a coping mechanism because like his mom's great in this movie. Like she's a good mom, but she's largely absent because that's how a single mother would be. Yeah. She's working like triples at the hospital. I don't even know if that's a thing. But.
And what a tremendous performance from Jennifer Jason Leigh for being such a kind of a more or less a background character for a lot of the movie 100%. and just kind of being this rock and giving this amazing understated performance in every scene that she's in. And then when she has that big kind of breakdown with him towards the denouement of the film, I mean, she carries every scene she's in.
Yeah, I mean, that whole scene, the breakdown in the kitchen there, like, it gives me chills, like, literally thinking about it because she owns that performance because she just feels like a mom. Yeah. She feels like she understands everything he's going through, and she does. Like, that character would. And Myles Teller kills it there, too, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's when he really is broken down.
The only thing I wish this film did differently is I would have liked to see more of that. Like, that was such an interesting story for me. I would have really enjoyed seeing him try to piece something out of his life after high school ended more. Yeah. Which I think, I mean, you can't really add too much more to this film and keep it like, the tight
it's like a 95-minute movie.
So, I mean, you don't want to expand it just for the sake of it. But that portion of the story, to me, I really would have liked to see, because they kind of leave it vague on purpose, which I appreciate too. I mean, he shows up to see her again.
Oh man!
And they both the actors have gone on to say they disagree on what happens next, which is fine. I think she said that they would have gotten back together because her character was so optimistic, and it would have probably still been an unhealthy relationship. Yeah. And then he said that like he felt Amy was strong enough where she would have been like, let's get lunch, and then that was it. Yeah. But I do appreciate that part, but I would have liked to see kind of between the hug with mom, because that was super powerful, and then to that moment, they show a little bit of him kind of growing, but I kind of would have liked just a little bit more of that, just to understand what he goes through, because that to me is very. Everyone else is in that liminal stage of graduating high school, deciding what they're going to do next, like, you know, making a life for themselves. And obviously the plot of the movie is that he's resisting that. And which I get, because like the idea of growing up is so scary, and, you know, he wants to be the fun guy. And then when he realizes he's just becoming his dad, it's this huge crisis. But then, I don't know. I just feel like there's a little bit more there that could have been teased out. But at the same time, I really appreciated how they kind of pieced it together in the end. So that would be my only change I would really, really make with this. I'll say my favorite thing altogether was that interaction between, was it Marcus? Was that the...
Yeah.
Marcus and him.
I love that
the
scene.
jock.
Yeah, that was just so good.
Yeah, so they have we haven't really gone through the whole plot, but in the middle of the movie, Marcus is dating Cassidy, who's like, if Miles Teller's Sutter Keeley is Mr. Popular, she's Miss Popular. And Marcus is the jock, the class president, and everything. And Sutter's a joke, like And in that interaction, they talk about it. But yeah, he comes in like
ready to beat his ass.
Yeah, Marcus comes in seeing red, like he's ready to go. Yeah. And Sutter uses his like weird charm to kind of talk him down. But I think more the way Sutter was talking to him, I think Marcus was like, this guy's a joke. Like, it's not even worth me beating him up or anything like that.
Yeah, it's like he knows that he's a joke, like you said. But at the same time, I mean, Sutter's able to kind of diffuse that anger immediately, and because he's friends with everyone. Yeah. And so it speaks to his character, even though it's like it's showing how much of a goof he is, but it's also like, it just felt very authentic, because, I don't know, you guys were saying this movie does have those moments of authenticity, and that definitely felt like one where, you know, everything's so drastic. You know, like he's upset that his girlfriend still has some kind of weird feelings for her ex. Yeah. So he's gonna beat him up. That's normal. And then, you know, just joking through it is also very normal. So I don't know. That just felt really, really real.
I think if you don't have a scene like that too, then it's easy to just say Sutter's a joke. Period. Like everything about him is. Yeah. But that scene also shows that he does, at his core, he is like a good person. And in the scene with Jennifer Jason Leigh at the end, the breakdown, she's talking about how big his heart is and stuff like that. And that scene's more believable because you see something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Myles.
I kind of agree with Max in that I would have liked maybe 10 or 15 more minutes just peppered into the movie, not extending necessarily a certain thing. I wanted to just live in that a little bit more, because it's framed tightly, and it's not so tight that everything feels like vignettes. But I would have liked a little more of seeing them throughout the school year, seeing him with other people, because we get just snapshots.
Yeah, we
really
do.
Kind of wanted to see a little bit more of that, and I forget that I read the book this is based on.
Yeah, the book is written by
Tim Tharp.
Yeah, and it was written in, I believe, 2008. So right before it was probably came out, and then was purchased right then by whoever.
Yeah, and so when I saw the trailer for this film, and I knew that this was not a film I was going to easily see, because I think it might have hit Greenville for maybe a week or two, if that. And
while we're on that real quick, its widest release was only 770 theaters, which is about a fifth of a real wide release, a fifth or a sixth. And it opened in 4 theaters. It still made $6.8 million, which is pretty good considering its small run and its $2.5 million budget.
Yeah, nice.
And it was A24's 5th ever release. And right now, I mean, they're very popular.
On top of the world now.
Yeah.
If an indie gets picked up by A24, its cachet goes up that much in the world just because they're prestigious.
It honestly, even though I don't love everything that A24 puts out, and I know Max does not, based on his last experience with them.
Oh, yeah.
But they did do The Witch also, and I love The Witch.
No, but everything I put out, I think, is at least usually worth watching.
Yeah, I'll agree on that.
They do the opposite of the Netflix strategy. They say, we're going to find movies that we believe in to release and
we believe distribute.
Yeah.
So the book is told in first person from Sutter's perspective, because I read it because I knew it would be a little while before I got to see the movie.
Yeah.
And it basically gives you a couple more of those scenes, because as a book, it can't quite be as brisk. as this film.
Right.
So you
can't
get a
jump
little bit
around.
more scenes. But knowing from Sutter's perspective, you really understand that he knows how bad he is for Amy. And he really does kind of – he doesn't really torture himself, but he does undergo some real like that's when you kind of realize that, oh, he does really love her, but he knows that for him to really show that, he has to let her go.
Yeah.
And he like makes plans to meet with her, or he might even make an excuse like, oh, I'll meet you there in Philadelphia, and doesn't show up. And that the book ends with, him making peace with that. Like, he doesn't go to see her. Like that is a construct of the movie. That said, I do overall think the movie is better because I don't like the way Sutter was necessarily written compared to how the character in the film was written.
I feel like the whole idea of a character that doesn't change works better in a novel versus a film. Because,
Right.
I mean, especially in a coming-of-age story, like a film is meant to, you want to take that character through change, or else you feel...
it's a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The few times a character doesn't change in a movie, the world changes, which this one does a little bit. The world's changing because everyone in high school is leaving high school. But for him, it felt very crucial that he goes through some kind of change.
Yeah.
So whether that's even just recognizing which sounds like that's what the book's doing more, he's recognizing that he's trouble. Yeah. And so that's still some change, but I get what you're saying. Sometimes you can read a book that it works because, the flat character, you understand his perspective and it makes sense. Not even that he's flat, but just that big moment isn't there.
Well, I agree. I felt in the book he's a little flatter. He doesn't have Myles Teller's charisma, and he's just kind of written a little more smarmy.
Yeah.
I feel like he's still got the same kind of characteristics as the film version. He's not a bad guy, but he's a little more, I'm making excuses for everything, and a little more aggressive about that. Whereas Myles Teller's Sutter is aloof.
Yeah, but the excuses and stuff, that is still part of the character here. Like,
sure,
he's
absolutely.
failing everything in school, and the teacher's like, you got a D+ on this test, you have to get a C, or you're not going to graduate. And he's like, well, I'll try harder, I guess.
Yeah.
But, like, you can tell he doesn't mean it.
Also, at least it's not an F.
Yeah, at least it's not an F. Wasn't the novel written with Sutter as kind of an unreliable narrator at times as well?
Yes.
That's what I was reading an interview with the author, and he said that's like the biggest difference. But
I think for the most part, Amy is pretty much the same.
Okay.
And I thought it was interesting because I felt like they kind of twisted the idea of that kind of character. Usually that character kind of swoops in and
like a
brings
savior.
up like the way Joseph Gordon-Levitt views Zooey Deschanel's character in 500 Days of Summer, which was directed by the same guy, I think.
Written by the same pair.
There you go.
Yeah, James Ponsoldt didn't direct it, but
because isn't it Mark Webb that did 500 Days?
You're 100% correct.
And the writers who adapted this novel are Scott Neustadter and Michael H. Weber.
But I do think that they relied heavily on... Did 500 come out before this?
500 came out before this.
Yeah, I think they relied heavily on that in the advertisements for this. Yeah.
It was on the posters, it was in the trailer and everything, What I like about that, that they didn't make Amy that savior character is she easily could have been, and it felt like she wanted to be, but Sutter actively rejected it.
Yeah.
Like, they get in that car accident after the scene with Kyle Chandler, who plays Sutter's father, and he's excellent in his one scene. They get in that car wreck, they spin off the road, and she's like asking him, are you okay? And he's like, why are you worried about me? I almost just killed you, and stuff like that. And that's him
flipped.
pushing her away because he just came face to face with someone that he loathed, but is also him. It's his future.
Yeah.
I mean, he saw a dark mirror in his father.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I think that's probably the most identifiable thing in this film is, you're always scared you're going to, like, reproduce the flaws that your parents might have. And even if that flaw is just, like, they're a jerk, or if the flaw is, they're a workaholic who can't pay attention to their family. Like, every person has something that they worry about.
Yeah.
So I think that's, like, one of the most identifiable things in this film. And, I mean, with this one, it's like, Kyle Chandler...
Oh, my gosh.
He normally plays... not normally, but he's a lot of times played like a really upstanding character.
He does.
Friendly looking.
Friendly, well kept. I was just
You have
amazed.
Coach Taylor, you have the sheriff in Super 8. Like, that is his character type.
And simply putting him in a baggy shirt changed, like a 5 o'clock shadow and a baggy shirt changed how this man looks completely.
Yeah.
And that shirt was like 2 to 3 sizes too large, and it did wonders for the character. Yeah. I don't know what it is about a giant baggy shirt on a dad like that. It worked.
He owns this role though, because from the moment, like the phone conversation is one thing. From the moment he's on the screen, first he shows up, like when Sutter and Amy show up, he's like, "Who are you?" Yeah. When they had talked on the phone already.
Yeah.
Right.
And then every moment he's on the screen, his eyes are darting around. He is not committed to this conversation. He's latched on to these like childhood facts. Yeah. He's like, "Are you still playing baseball?"
Yeah.
But then what I like is he never like Sutter kind of he doesn't hate his mom, or he
resents his mom.
He resents. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah. And so he's like, there's two sides to every story. Like, mom kicked you out of the house, and then Kyle Chandler, I don't know the dad's name, but
I don't remember.
He's like, she didn't kick me out of the house. Like, don't you talk about your mother that way?
Yeah,
like, there's still that part of the character, and that scene is so powerful because the movie turns from there.
Yeah, I think that is also where Sutter sees how much of his father he is, because his father isn't bad-mouthing his mother. He's telling him the truth.
Yeah.
But he still sees what a nightmare of a human being that, he could be. He sees himself there. And
you could tell his mom and his sister, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, knew that was going to happen, because his mom first won't give him his dad's number at all. And then he goes to his sister, and she very begrudgingly gives it to him, and like she's on the verge of tears when she gives it to him, and he doesn't like get it.
Yeah.
And it's probably part of his rejection.
Sheltered.
But yeah, he has been sheltered.
Yeah. And that's kind of a big part of like the idea of growing up in here is, as kids, we are kind of sheltered from the bad parts of life. And obviously there's this like really bad part that he has not been exposed to. And, maybe, and he says it to the boss, if I was your kid, this wouldn't be a problem.
That's
and that's like such a good moment there. But
he works at that suit shop. Bob Odenkirk runs it, and Bob Odenkirk says to him, this is after the scene with his father, after the wreck with Amy. Had Amy already left? I believe she had, to Philadelphia.
Maybe
she did right after that. I can't 100% remember, but Bob Odenkirk's like, yeah, you notice business has been down. I got to cut one of the clerks, and I want to keep you. And then Sutter's like, oh, that's great. And then Bob Odenkirk's like, well, wait. The only way I can do it is if you stop drinking. And Sutter's straight up like, well, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, and then Bob Odenkirk's like, this is where I'd give you that rah-rah speech, about how you're ruining your life. And then Sutter says,
if I was your dad.
If you were my dad, you wouldn't have to.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the book, and that was one of the few things in the book I liked, is I think that plays out differently. I think he has to fire him for the same reasons.
An event or something.
Not for an event.
From something that happened with the drinking.
I think he knows about it, but I feel like he just has to let him go because of like money problems.
Yeah.
But I think he also does it. He has to do it because of money problems. He has to let somebody go, and he chooses Sutter because he says that it's almost like an opposite version of this story, where he's like, you would be amazing here. You've always been fantastic, but you are settling, and you need to actually do something with your life. And I don't believe that you'll do that if you stay here. And as someone who cares about you, I can't let that happen.
So it's still like a fatherly role.
Yes. The relationship is still the same. I kind of liked the one in the book a little bit better in that instance, but this scene still works very well.
Yeah. I mean, like Bob Odenkirk is all the characters are honestly kind of background characters to Sutter. Even Amy to an extent. Like Amy, Shailene Woodley's great in this movie.
She's phenomenal in this movie.
It would be easy to make her like that manic pixie dream girl or something,
Yeah.
And they don't. She's a very normal girl. And like even Jody said while we were watching, like she's not wearing makeup, which I'm sure she still was, but
just the natural.
Yeah, they made it like a very natural look. And she's very innocent and warm.
I like that.
And it's a good duality.
She had a lot of tropes of like what a weird girl would have.
Yeah.
Like she liked manga and stuff like that, and anime, but that wasn't like.
But she wasn't weird.
Yeah, and honestly, he introduced her to more stuff than your manic pixie dream girl would do.
Yeah.
And if anything, I mean, they kind of inspired each other to try and stand up for what they wanted, and then obviously he drops the ball because it's just Sutter, but. She did learn valuable lessons kind of from him in a way.
Right.
And that's just kind of interesting. I mean, I would almost think if
it turns it around, basically. It turns that kind of trope around because...
and I'm trying to think of how to word it. It would be interesting to see a movie a lot like this, but just from her perspective. Maybe not even the same movie, but just like something similar.
I feel like that might be, to an extent, maybe what 8th grade is going to be like, where you're introduced like to a rather toxic boyfriend. Sutter's a pretty toxic guy.
Yeah.
And how does she grow up and recover from that? Even though she's infatuated, she says she's in love with him, and you always feel like you're in love with that high school love, your first boyfriend stuff.
Yeah.
And then I imagine that it would have been devastating to be like, yeah, let's go to Philly, and then just not ghosted her at that bus stop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows he's trouble, but it's hard to separate that infatuation from a bad character.
I think what's so fascinating about the relationship is he's not toxic in the classic way.
Yeah, that's true.
And he understands his toxicity and is trying to grow, because his toxicity isn't, I think, as a boyfriend, but as his as how he lives his life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it's a weird kind of toxicity than when we talk about toxicity usually in the modern zeitgeist.
Yeah.
It's not like abusive. It's not physically abusive.
And it's not even fully like misogynistic either.
Yeah.
It's
no,
more
he's
like,
just kind of a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Exactly.
He's not using her because she's innocent for an easy lay or anything like that. Ricky, his friend, even says that. He's like, I don't forget her last name, but Amy, like that's a weird rebound. Yeah, Amy Finicky, that's a weird rebound. But it wasn't a rebound.
Yeah.
No, and he's quick to kind of that's what's so interesting about him is he's quick to kind of dispel other people's misogynist behavior.
Yeah. I mean, and there's so many ways where it's like it teeters towards, it hints at these like tropes that movies use and that work in a lot of films, but like he keeps trying to get with Cassidy.
Yeah.
And he's obviously with Amy, but at the same time, Cassidy shoots him down every single time, even though she herself has feelings.
And she opens up those conversations, and then she's like, okay, gotta go.
Yeah, which also feels realistic.
That's very high school.
Oh, it's so high school.
If right off the bat, and I'll say this is the only thing that didn't work for me with Brie Larson and Myles Teller, who I like both. I love Brie Larson, but they...
And you love Myles Teller.
I love Myles Teller. They both look a little bit too old to be high school to me.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, I said to Scott when we were watching this, I like the 6-year difference between Ricky and Sutter here, and that's literally how different in age they are. So, I mean, Ricky looked very authentic to high school, and a lot of the casting looks really like what's Amy's friend's name?
The actress
Crystal.
is Caitlin Devers, I think, but I don't remember that.
Myles, what did you say?
Crystal.
Yeah. So she looked authentically high school, and even Shailene Woodley looks authentically high school at this point. So like a lot of that really worked, and
the reason Myles doesn't look high school is he's just a big guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's tall. He's big,
broad shoulders,
and then
classic Hollywood handsome.
With Brie Larson, I've been following her career forever, so it's like for me to think back to when she was like high school age, I know she looks different.
Mm-hmm.
So those two things just kind of clash, but they are such good actors that it doesn't even faze me really. I just notice it visually.
On the opposite end, I felt like Mary Elizabeth Winstead looked way younger. Like she looked like she should have been in high school.
Yeah.
She looked like she was playing a character, like when she was with the slicked back hair.
I want to say that's not just anything with Mary Elizabeth Winstead. They styled them to be rich people.
Yeah,
and that's like the only part in this film where the outfits, the wardrobe doesn't really work for me because she's dressed like Audrey Hepburn at one point in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and she's just there for no reason like that.
Well, that was at their dinner party, right? Their fancy dinner party. Everyone else was wearing like a suit.
Yeah.
So.
And then
except for Amy, who's wearing a blue T-shirt, which I loved.
And that I get that right there, that duality between that, where it's like these are just high school kids and they're not rich like his sister is now by marriage, which comes up in that whole conversation. But it just feels like a little too on the nose.
Yeah. No, it definitely
for
does.
like a 6-person dinner party. I don't know if people dress that fancy for that, but for a film, and even with that high school perspective, it kind of works because even if they were dressed business casual, they would look way fancier than high school kids. So there's that, and her other scenes. Even when it's a silent scene and they're eating breakfast, when he's thinking back over stuff. Like she's wearing like a cocktail dress or something like that.
That was at the end montage kind of. And I think that was them trying to like help. I don't think it was a flashback. I think that was like current time.
Oh, well, I know it cut to him like a couple other moments with his friends and stuff. So that's why I was saying flashback. But it was like just introspection basically. And there, it's like, once again, she's wearing the fancy outfit.
Yeah.
And I get it, what they're doing with it, but it was the only part for me where it was like I said, on the
it is a little
nose
jarring.
Yeah. So
What I did like about her character, though, is she didn't play your typical. I expected her character to be super snobbish.
Yeah.
And kind of caustic to Sutter. And especially when the conversation about her giving the phone number to Sutter, you know, she cares a lot for her brother.
Yeah.
Like she did fall into this life, and she obviously knows what Sutter thinks about it, but still tolerates and wants him to be around. She invites him to the dinner party.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
And I did not expect that relationship when I saw the
even
film.
at the dinner party, you know, like there's kind of conversations that tilt towards being like really awkward, and there is awkward moments in it, but
about dreaming.
I genuinely like that. While like at one point Sutter's kind of being a jerk, and she's kind of offended, they never push it where it's like a toxic brother-sister relationship. It's just like she's kind of hurt.
No one storms off
exactly
in the dinner party. And
It's not needlessly dramatic for
it
the
feels,
sake of the film.
It feels real. Like somebody said a bonehead thing, and then it kind of snowballs, and then it's just awkward for everybody.
Yeah.
Which is definitely, I mean, I as a teenage boy, I did that plenty of times. So,
for sure.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what works a lot with this. I'm not always sympathetic to Sutter in the film, and I don't think you're
not supposed to be.
But
I don't think.
yeah, and sometimes that's hard in a movie to watch, where you're like, this guy's being a total
When it's hard to
douchebag.
root for the main character. Yeah.
But when he hits those moments, I mean, he's really good. Like you said, with when he's crying with his mom at the end. I mean, that's
chills
the
again.
home run
Chills
there.
again right now. Active chills.
And I think that's what makes him work as a character is you don't have to like every aspect about the character. And I think that's something I think everyone can learn from fiction is you don't have to like every aspect about a character to appreciate them. And with Sutter, you definitely don't. But you can still, but yeah, he's a decent person. He's a likable human being. Yeah. And I'm interested in what story's being told. And I think that's what's so cool is it plays with archetypes, but it doesn't rest on them. Like I feel like every person in this movie, especially the kids, they felt like people that I've known, people that I've been or have like interacted with. Like everyone felt like someone who was not really playing a role, you know?
Yeah, that's the biggest win for the movie. I mean, the dialogue's so natural, and like sometimes it's not bad dialogue, but sometimes like a joke isn't funny. But for me, my batting average was low on my jokes in high school. Like that happens.
Yeah.
They're walking the scene where they're at like the first party together at that like collapsed bridge, and they're walking around and they're just like playing with a leaf that hits them in the head, and they just talk about that stuff in such a naturally flowing way.
Yeah.
That it feels so believable. And then those characters, I knew Amy's, I knew Sutter's, I knew Ricky's. Yeah, I was those people to an extent, like you said, Myles. Like it just makes makes those emotional punches, especially in that last quarter of the movie, hit even harder. Yeah, because we've all had moments, we've all broken down. Yeah, I'm not too proud to claim I haven't.
Yeah,
no, absolutely.
Master of disguise. I held Scott while he cried.
Hours. But no, God, I just love this. For me, the last point I'll make, in other high school movies, alcohol is used as the fun, let loose, hey, we're all having an alcohol party, and there's rarely consequences. Sometimes that's like where a rape will happen in a movie if a movie goes in that direction, but usually for your main character, this is someone who's letting loose. Like even think about Spider-Man Homecoming. There's a big party in that movie, and it's like, is Spider-Man going to show up? I'm going to come back as Spider-Man and stuff. So it's always painted in this fun light, and it's so dark here, and that's so much more real.
Usually if you get a dark high school party, it's like a horror film, and they're going to all die. So it's like the way
Scream.
further end of it. Yeah, Scream, exactly. You know, you drink, you have sex, and then you're dead. This one is definitely a lot different, obviously, because it's not a horror film. But
or is it?
But no, it is. We were talking right before we started. It's funny that there's no marijuana in the film because that feels like it could work. But then we were saying you either know the beer guy or you know the weed guy. And this would be a very different film if he was just a stoner. So, I mean, I think it's smarter just to cut that out. If he was a stoner, he would probably just, you know.
He would
have been like, Mom, can I have Dad's number? She's like, no, he's like,
cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
No, but I mean, alcohol can ruin lives, and I knew people in high school who binge drank like this, and like some people I've talked to, and usually they're older than me, and I don't know if the times have changed. I'm 27, but they said that felt unbelievable to them, that he was drinking that much or that he could get alcohol and stuff. But I don't think
Oh no, that was totally believable. I know so many people like that, and I think what's cool about the movie though is while the alcohol aspect is darker, the movie is not pointing at the alcohol the entire time, saying, "Look, this is bad," because it's framed as honestly how I remember high school. And I obviously wasn't like in the cool kids club or anything like that, but I remember like the parties. They were exactly that. They weren't big ragers. They were a couple of kids awkwardly hanging out and drinking.
Yeah,
a pile of solo cups next to a keg.
Myles, me and you would have been those two kids trying to talk anime with Amy. Let's be real.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I would have been that third kid talking to her who just shook my head at Sutter as they walked away.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that scene where he just walks away shaking his head like, oh man,
that's so
Poor
funny.
Kid. I'd like to see the movie from his perspective.
Have either of you seen James Ponsolt's other film, Smashed?
Not Smashed. I've seen other films of his, but not Smashed.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Smashed is
that was his first. It wasn't a major release, but it was his first like a well-known release, maybe.
Yeah, and it has Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Aaron Paul, and the other girl that I like a lot, who I can't remember. She was in Blade Runner 2049.
Mackenzie Davis.
Mackenzie Davis, yeah. And a couple other people in it too, but that movie literally is about alcohol recovery and alcohol addiction, and I think Ponsolt has a very good understanding of what to show sometimes with stuff. So, I mean, with this, he had a very good way of showing someone subtly drinking more and more and just you know, kind of self-medicating with it. And
that's actually a great way to put it.
Yeah.
He was self-medicating his own shortcomings with alcohol.
And in Smashed, it's a different approach. It's definitely people who have already reached that point of alcoholism and someone trying to dial back from that. And it's really interesting. I definitely recommend it, and not just because I'm a Mary Elizabeth Winstead fan, but just because like it's a legitimately good movie. And there's moments in it where I was just like kind of floored by how real it all felt. And if you've ever known an alcoholic or anything, it's going to feel pretty authentic at points. So, and it has an ending that I really appreciated. Kind of I won't say anything about it, but no, I just appreciate the film as a whole. So I definitely recommend that. I haven't seen all of Ponsolt's work, but
we haven't. Before we go to the rest of his filmography, we haven't touched much on like the technical aspects of the film, but it's shot really beautifully. They like kind of mute the color palette
it has
a little,
a muted palette,
and it felt very like the movie doesn't take place anywhere basically. Yeah, like it was filmed in Athens, where I think Ponsolt grew up, and the book takes place in Oklahoma. But that doesn't really matter. So this kind of felt like suburbia.
Every
town,
USA, basically,
which worked really well. The music is wonderful.
Very
it's subtle, but it suits the scenes. It ramps up when it needs to. And they never do like a stupid shaky cam scene. They didn't have like a 7-minute one take scene like every movie tries to do. It just showed the movie in a really nice way. Yeah. The sex scene that they have, her first time, that was like a 2-minute one cut.
Yeah,
but I think that just suited. Like it kind of builds the awkwardness of it a little bit because losing your virginity is awkward.
They blocked that scene so well. Like it felt very real. I mean,
it felt very
they're
personal.
laughing and they're awkward, and I'm like, that's about sums it up.
Yeah,
and
it goes. Sure. I mean, it goes. It kind of like a POV to like a Y to slowly closing in until it's like their faces basically. And that felt real. I mean, it felt like you're getting intimate with them, basically. Which sounds weird, but I just mean like the emotions of it.
I've had dreams getting intimate with Myles Teller. Ponsolt's biggest recent release was The Circle, which I believe came out last like April or so.
And wasn't that?
Yeah, it bombed.
I was gonna say.
Myles, did you see it?
I did.
How was it?
Not great.
Yeah. See.
Now visually, like he's still a good director, and I think he wrote this film.
And Myles likes Fantastic Four, so.
Like anything.
I'm not alone in this, man. And this movie had a great cast. It's got Tom Hanks. It's got Emma Watson.
John.
I've only heard bad things about it. Is the thing.
It has some good. I didn't hate it as much as everyone else did, but I felt the ending was silly. It's not. They sold the movie as something completely different than it was.
Yeah. That'll do it.
I did see the end of Tour and thought that was excellent.
Yeah, I saw part of it, and I've been meaning to finish it, but it was. What I watched was very good, and that's another sort of subtler, like tighter cast, like more focused movie. I wonder if that just suits Ponsolt better because Smash sounds like it.
The Shyamalan syndrome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, some directors can't handle like big concepts; they're better at small.
But I still think Shyamalan does all right. The Village is good.
Really? The Last Airbender?
You know what?
He's never seen the cartoon.
I never watched the cartoon. Last Airbender, not that bad. I'm out. No, I mean, it's not a good movie, but it's like, for me, it's like a Fantastic Four. Like,
okay, I mean, I can respect
bad,
that.
But
like, I still like. I'm not going to hold
no.
it against you.
It's like Dev Patel like whirring his hands around for 30 seconds to make like a little spark.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
I like that. Like the like people like basically moving rocks in slow motion.
There's a lot of funny things about that movie for me.
There's funny things.
That's all I could say.
I understand it's a failure of the adaptation and everything, but like on its own, if it was called like Ixodor, the Four Elements of the Lost Way, or something like totally separate from Avatar, right, it wouldn't have been that bad.
I'm texting that to you now.
I'll write that movie. I'll write Ixodor, the Four Elements of the Lost Way. Ponsel,
so I
you
haven't
available?
made it all the way through that movie. I would be willing to give that one a shot.
Well, when I next see you, I'll give you the Blu-ray, and you do not have to give it back. But
that's a winning endorsement.
Yeah. Myles, do you have any more thoughts here on The Spectacular Now?
I mean, we could.
It's lovely. Yeah, we could go.
Yeah,
we could go.
I could go for hours on this bad boy.
I'm like you, Scott. I love this movie. Oh. It was one of those movies that I knew I was going to love it as soon as I saw the trailer. Yeah. It's just it was one of those films that I just had that feeling about, and I own this one on Blu-ray. I think if you like, even if you don't like coming of age films, if you want an authentic,
just character drama.
Yeah, character drama. Yeah. Like this is the perfect thing. It's not going to give you like a Say Anything John Cusack, John Hughes moment.
Oh my god, I'm so glad you said Say Anything. I love that movie.
But it's excellent. I think it's one of the better teenage films in the last several years, although they've been making more and more good ones. And honestly, Ebert felt the same way. It was one of his last reviews, and he said, here's a lovely film about two high school seniors who look, speak, and feel like real 18-year-old middle American human beings. Do you have any idea how rare that is?
No.
And when
he would know.
To talk on and actually compared Sutter to Lloyd in Say Anything.
Oh, that's cool. Funny. I mean, those are legitimately two of my top 5 favorite movies. And I've never read that review. I'm going to look it up when we're done here. But that's cool that he compared. Because I know he was, this is way off topic. Ebert was really high on Say Anything when it came out because it was kind of, it wasn't an indie film per se, but it wasn't like a big release.
Smaller.
He was like, this should have been nominated for Best Picture.
I mean, it's when you look at certain things, like with Face Off, it's refreshing when it came out. Now it looks pretty average compared to other action movies made now. Yeah. I mean, Say Anything is really refreshing, especially when you put it in that time period. So
Sutter and Lloyd are very similar. They're both authentic. Okay, I can't dive into that.
Yeah, but no, I loved the movie.
Yeah, Max, final. What's your 140 characters or less on? Well, 280. Do you get now on Twitter?
You get unlimited because you can just keep adding tweets, and I do every day.
Nice.
I love doing that. I'm gonna.
My morning rants. I get on these morning rants sometimes, but it's when the coffee kicks in. But for this, I'm glad we watched it. I'm glad you picked it. It's been on my maybe I should watch that list forever, and you've been kind of razzing me for a while.
I've been trying not to push it on you too hard because this is the movie that if you didn't like, I would be so sad.
His way of not pushing it would be like, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in The Spectacular Now, and I'm like, okay. You should have pushed Brie Larson.
Hey, I pushed the one card that I knew was an ace.
Yeah, I always blank that she's in that because when I was talking to Max, you didn't sound hesitant, but you were definitely
not all in.
No, just a little more apprehensive about how you feel about it.
I think it was just a little bit of. It's not something it's more like a slight, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's a slight bit of apathy with it where I was like, yeah, we're going to watch this. That's fine. I'm fine with it, but I'm not jazzed.
Right.
But then when you were because Scott told me he loves this movie, and that, not to discredit Scott, but when I had two people who were super passionate about it, I was like, okay, well, yeah, this is fun,
Wow.
I was actually
double
worried.
The passion.
I was like, this is gonna be an awkward conversation where I'm super into this movie and no one else likes it.
No.
God, I love it. Yeah. Do you guys ever get nervous almost watching a movie that's someone that you even respect their opinion a ton recommends really highly? I get nervous all the time.
Yeah. I get nervous taking recommendations, even though I always ask for them and giving them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm the same way.
I get nervous just all the time.
But no, I will say,
I
think I said earlier, one of my favorite coming-of-age films is Almost Famous, which I really love how that's like this bombastic idea of, you know, a teenager fish out of water, writing about rock bands. He has no idea what he's doing. He learns to grow from it. And I like also that this is completely opposite, that this is like an actual experience, you know? Like, I've lived this experience, basically.
We all have.
And I appreciate that about it.
For sure.
Scott?
I don't think I could say more positive things about it, but it just executes a really lovely idea, and it tells a very serious story in a very charming and wonderful way.
So what do you guys think happened once he met up with her at the end?
That looked like a sad smile to me. Like, happy to see you, but I can't have you in my life anymore smile.
I don't know. And I think that's what I love about that. I felt like he tried to make her facial expressions. And I mean, all credit to Shailene Woodley, because you see like a mixture of elation, of torn pain, of anger. Like you see her face kind of morph a few times in her smile. And I think, to me, it's a better kind of mystery than, for whatever reason, people were so obsessed with the Lost in Translation. Like, oh, what did he say to her? Who cares? But like, I felt like that was the perfect ending to the movie, because I know some people have got mad about it. I'm like, no, that's life.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I like this ending. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
love
it.
This ending.
Because that's a real relationship. You don't just show up in someone's life and it's like everything's good again.
Yeah.
You either have to like work for it.
Yeah, I mean,
relationships are work.
And when you're showing something that feels authentic, it's more authentic to show it with I don't know how this turns out, because you don't in real life. Versus, and they lived happily ever after.
It's a classic Inception.
I do agree with Woodley. I think she probably would have taken him back into her life, because I don't think she had been away from him long enough for a lot of that residual dependence that she had. And not dependence in a, I mean, it was a negative way, but like I feel like she did care for her, she did love him, and I felt like he felt the same way. But neither of them were ready for that kind of relationship.
Yeah, I could see that.
And that's why he actively
tried to push
her away, whereas she tried to let him in more.
Yeah,
right. Which is why I find this story so amazing, is because there's so many layers, and it's got all the messiness and the complexity of both young love and love in general in this film. And I think it's expertly laid out.
It definitely is. Couldn't have said it better myself, so I won't. Max, where can the good people find us?
You can find us failing our geometry test, or you can find us at thecriticalbreakdown.com.
I did nail the one geometry problem they said out loud.
There you go. So maybe I'm just failing it, and Scott's
I didn't even like conceive that problem. I was like, yep, that's a thing.
Yeah,
they're making up words. And 30 degrees.
I was like, those are very cute angles. But no, you can find us on Twitter, on Facebook. Our email address is podcast@thecriticalbreakdown.com.
Boom.
You can find me staring into those sweet Myles Teller eyes. Or you can find me on Twitter at Max Rivera Film.
You can find me at a swanky dinner party with Mary Elizabeth Winstead and friends. Or you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at breakdown_Scott, or on the Letterboxd at Stenin2. Logging all the movies.
You can find me dazed and confused in someone's lawn at The More You Nerd at gmail.com. At Twitter, it's just The More You Nerd. And our website's themoreyounerd.com. If you tweet at us, you're usually talking to me almost 98% of the time. So I actually basically use it as my personal Twitter as well as my I follow like all of my friends. Like I follow both. Yeah, I follow you guys and the podcast.
Triple follow.
Justin at Psychotronic Pod. Like I talk to all of my podcast friends and my real friends, like using that one. I don't have a personal Twitter anymore. It's just that one.
Yeah, because you have like a legacy personal Twitter, and I remember one day it just switched and just never went back. So.
Man, yeah, because I messaged you about something like 2 years after you tweeted.
Yeah.
Because you were asking me something about the podcast, and I think you would later like ask me on Facebook, and I was like, "Oh man, dude, I did not mean to blow you off at all. I just stopped using that Twitter."
Yeah. No, it made me laugh. And once I realized it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it.
Myles, what do you guys have coming up on The More You Nerd?
Our last episode was my birthday episode in which I challenged everyone to watch Dune.
Nice.
Oh, we did a Dooney.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting experience.
Is this the David Lynch Dune?
The David Lynch film, yeah.
Hell yeah. That's one that like I liked the first time I watched it when I was like 13 or 14 because it was so fucking weird.
Yeah.
And then I hated it like the next time I tried to watch it. And then when we watched it for our podcast, I was like, this is fucking amazing and bad.
There's
and
a pug
good.
in it.
Yeah.
So.
It's a hodgepodge of emotions.
Yeah.
Like I came off really positively to it because I just thought it was mostly just really neat.
Yeah.
Well,
I
Denis
thought there was some
Villeneuve is going to be doing the new ones.
I cannot wait for those. Yeah. I think he's the perfect choice, especially after Blade Runner 2049.
Have you seen Jodorowsky's Dune, the documentary?
I haven't yet.
Ooh, check that one out. It's definitely worth it.
Cool.
I want to see it, but so we were doing our first deep dive challenge, and the first half of it was to watch the first 2 Karate Kid films.
Oh, nice.
Second half is to watch Cobra Kai as the kind of bookend. And
I've heard the show's good. I've been meaning to watch it.
Yeah, so we're doing the show this week, which so I'll be watching that this week. But it was super, super fun to go back and rewatch the first 2 Karate Kid films, and how much I kind of smashed those 2 movies together in retrospect as a kid. I also realized Daniel's kind of a dick.
Oh yeah,
that's the movement that's been forming.
Yeah, Team Johnny.
But no, well, not necessarily Team Johnny. Like Johnny's still a bad person in that movie. but there's a lot of scenes where I'm like, dude, stop poking the bear.
You gotta know when to fold them, Daniel's son.
The second film is great. I love the second Karate Kid film.
I've seen it.
It's been years for me, man.
They go to Japan. It's pretty dope.
Is that the one with the hurricane?
Yep.
Or typhoon or whatever you call it?
Tsunami.
Yeah.
Maybe tsunami. Yeah.
But yeah,
I remember that sequence very vividly. So.
Going. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Everybody, check out The More You Nerd and Cosmic
Crit
for more Myles, or catch us in 2020.
No,
we're going to review Only the Brave, starring Myles Teller. No, that movie was really good, but we are going to have Myles on again before we hit 100. That's a pledge. So, Myles, you're locked in.
Yeah, you're locked in, Myles.
Our music is done by Jason Brown.
Our artwork is done by the lovely Josh Rivera.
And Walter's kind of the podcast Sutter Keeley.
Yeah, he's definitely a drunkard. So.
Or the podcast Rickies.